Well, for 49 years, Bob Irving was the voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And to retire 1 year too soon?
Actually, they won the Grey Cup last year, and the last game I ever did was the West Final against Saskatchewan. It was a dramatic, down to the wire game. So, and then I went and covered the Grey Cup. We couldn't broadcast it, but no, I've just enjoyed sitting back and watching the same movie again this year. The run that this team has been on since October of 2019 is really indescribable in some ways, and unprecedented in many ways in the long history of the Canadian Football League.
Is this a better team this year, Bob, than last?
No, I don't think so. The defense was better last year. They stopped the run better last year. I think their offense this year is a little bit better, even though they lost Andrew Harris and Kenny Lawler, their best receiver. I wouldn't say it's better, but 15-3 is a pretty good record. They won more close games this year. Last year, they won most of their games by 10, 15, 18 points. So I think last year's team was a bit stronger.
Well, there's no doubt this is the best team in the Canadian Football League. I'm quite surprised that the betting line is only 5 or somewhere around there. I thought it would be a lot more than that. What about you?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. The Argos, though, were they 12-6, I think. And they beat the Bombers in the only game they played this year and outplayed them quite decidedly. That was early in the season in Toronto. Sorry, they didn't beat them. They lost by a point when Beattie missed a game-tying convert with about 30 seconds left. But the Argos controlled much of that game, and I don't know how much the odds makers put into that, because that was way back in, I think, in July. But the Bombers, and it's a neutral site, although I think you'd give the Bombers home field advantage. It'd be interesting to see what the fans will do in Regina, because they hate Winnipeg. But everybody hates Toronto out here, so I don't know what the fans are going to do.
Well, they could have solved the problem and had the Lions go. That would have been easier, Bob. You know that.
Yes, it would have.
Will there be a boatload of Winnipeg fans going to Saskatchewan for the game?
Well, here's the problem. Yeah, lots of people would go if they could find a hotel room. And this is always the issue when Saskatchewan hosts a Grey Cup game. There's so few hotel rooms. People will stay in Moose Jaw, which is 45 miles away. And I don't know if they'll stay as far away as Saskatoon, but the issue, and I've heard from a lot of people in Winnipeg since Sunday, they want to go, but they can't find a hotel room. And even the Airbnbs are charging like $500 a night for the 3 or 4 days. Everybody gouges during the Grey Cup, but so yeah, a lot of people from Winnipeg would have bought their tickets earlier, but a lot more would go if they could find a place to put their head down at night.
Yeah.
Hey, so how surprised were you? There's 30,000 people in Winnipeg for the game, 31,000, and 21,000 people in Toronto. That you must feel that augurs well where the CFL these days. If you can put 20,000 people at a football game in Toronto.
Well, the Toronto thing it was the East Final, right? And I think they had their largest crowd of the year last year in the East Final. I won't be convinced it means much until next year, and if they have more than 9 or 10 or 11,000 at their home games. It was nice to see for sure, but Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment has to find a way to make that translate into 23 with bigger numbers at home. Here in Winnipeg, I mean, we had 5 home games of over 30,000 people. Impossible for me, guys, to describe the electricity, the emotion that's in the air at IG Field when the Bombers play at home these days. It truly is remarkable. You can feel it in your bones, and I just love it. I was in the crowd on Sunday, and everybody's having a great, and this is now, everybody loves a winner, right? So everybody's on the bandwagon, although the fan base here is very strong anyway, but it's a very unique feeling, and it's really, really cool.
Well, let's get deeper into what has made the Bombers so successful. They appear to be, as you talk about, the most stable franchise in the CFL. The stadium, once they moved from the old Winnipeg Stadium to down on the university campus, it seems to have changed it. But what has been the key to the stability of the Bombers in the last 5 or 6 years, Bob?
2013, they hired Wade Miller to be the CEO. He hired Mike O'Shea to be the head coach the next year. And then Wade was patient because the Bombers were 7-11, 5-13 in O'Shea's first 2 years, and started 1-3 in his third year. And everybody's wondering, is he on thin ice? Well, Wade Miller said, no, this guy's the right guy, and I'm staying with him. And they turned it around that season. They've had double digit win seasons ever since. Patience, and here's a term that Mike O'Shea has used, grace. He was allowed the grace to stay with it and to be given the time to build what he knew would work. And then now we're talking culture, right? The most, I guess, the favorite word in sport these days. O'Shea has built a culture of togetherness and support your teammates. And he's got great leaders in the locker room. You know, you can be a great coach, but if you don't have great players, it doesn't matter, right? He's a great coach and he's got great players and they're all terrific leaders. And he turns the locker room over to the players. This is the beautiful thing that he does. I can't think of a head coach who would be less involved on a day-to-day basis in the locker room or with the players one-on-one than Mike O'Shea. He lets his assistant coaches and the leaders, the Zach Collaros, the Willie Jefferson, the Adam Bighills, take charge in the locker room. They've got a sign there. You guys probably heard about it. FIFO, fit in or you know what off. That's the sign above the door in their locker room. And I mean, it's a great formula and it's worked beautifully, obviously.
And you mentioned one guy that I thought for sure would try to get to the National Football League, and that's Bighill. I thought for sure that he was going to be one of those guys that would be, you know, here, prove himself, and then go back south. But he's elected to re-sign and stay, correct?
Yeah, well, John, remember a few years ago, he did play a year down there after
Right.
BC, and then he came back here and he settled into the community here. He lives here year round, and he wasn't planning to do that when he came back. This is another one of the reasons the Bombers are doing so well. Back at 2018, just before the start of the season, when he decided he'd had enough of the NFL, he was coming back to the CFL, the Bombers signed him. And one of the reasons he wanted to come here was because of the great things he heard about the way the organization is run. And so now he built a new house in Winnipeg. His family's settled in here. He's 34 years old, but he's still playing at a high level. And he's become a huge part of the community. It's kind of hard to describe to people what happens here in the football community, but lots of the players just become immersed in the community. I mean, Adam Bighill's a good promoter of himself, and he's got a big truck that he drives with his name on it. He's got all sorts of commercial endorsements and all the rest of it. You can make a nice living as a sports star in Winnipeg outside of the playing field.
I haven't seen what the weather's going to be like in Saskatoon or in Saskatchewan, but what do you hear and what do you think the impact will be?
Well, they say it's going to be -3 at it goes on, it'll get a little colder, -6, 7, 8, but it was -6, 7 here on Sunday for the West Final, and the players functioned very well in it. You know, I think if it's down near -19 or 20, Bob, and windy, then it becomes really difficult. But no, from all signs, the weather's going to be as good as you could expect for November 20th in southern Saskatchewan, and I think we all kind of hope for that. I know it's funny, Mike O'Shea loves inclement weather because he feels his team is more suited to succeeding in that sort of thing, but he won't get the inclemency. It doesn't look like right now anyway that he'd like to see on Sunday. It's going to be pretty good weather.